Hello, my name is Dr. George Mochocki, and welcome in this series for Supervision. And today we're going to be talking about managing diversity. This will be series 5 or chapter 5 if you're taking me in an online class or face-to-face class and you're using this as a supplemental training session to our formal face-to-face, or you're taking me fully on an online class, and this is supplemental to the reading and the concept maps that you've already been provided. Okay, so let's talk about diversity. Let's talk about managing diversity from a first-line supervisor perspective. It is important, since you're the one who will be managing a diverse workforce, and you're the one who's going to bring diversity into your team and also help other team members able to communicate, try to overcome certain prejudices that people come into, try to minimize and eliminate zero policy and discriminations, and understanding the effects, the positive effects of stereotyping, sexism, or sexual harassment occurs or leads to something that could be sexually a hostile work environment. I'm going to talk about a little bit about ageism and talk about 10 reasons to hire older employees, disability, what are accommodations, what is a fair accommodation for disability, advantages of a diversified a team for a supervisor, and what's the advantage of a diversification within an organization. Pluses why it makes sense to diversify within a group or a company. Okay, and then how do I improve on communication, and what do I look like? What do I look at? Because communication, the nonverbal cue is a little bit different from different cultures, and laws about discrimination. Okay, so let's go into this diversification first. Now, I'm not going to cover everything else. You have the supplemental material. I'm just going to give you an overview just to think about it. From a first-line supervisor, you have a lot to think about. And you remember, the same skill sets of a first-line supervisors carry over to middle managers or entrepreneurs or small business owners, because you're a first-line supervisor, middle manager, and senior manager. So what is diversity? Diversity, in a nutshell, if I look at diversity, and I'll push this over here, is characteristics of individuals that shape their identities and experiences they have in society. Me, I'm Polish, so I have certain characteristics of what a Polish person should be. I'm not like everyone. None of us are alike. But I picked that up because the culture has influence on me. If I'm predominantly around Polish people, I pick up certain things. I'm predominantly around mixed cultures, I start picking up different signals, different cues of different cultures. But that's basically my own culture. I have certain characteristics and experiences. Now, dealing successfully with cultures, and I'm looking at diversity, I'm looking at ethnicity, I'm looking at age, I'm looking at gender, racial diversity, and and all of this diversity is a lifelong process. It's not going to happen overnight. Okay, so what are some of the trends? Men. If I'm looking at men, from 1980, half of the workforce was predominantly white, Caucasian individuals. Okay, men, white men, like or not. Women now currently hold half of all management, professional related occupations, and participation is about 50%. There's more women now in the workforce, not at all different levels, traditional and non-traditional opportunities for ladies. Okay, aging workforce, we're getting older just by trends, and we'll talk about the aging workforce. I think it's like 20% of the U.S. population is over 65. How do I tap into this workforce? They are my customers. Okay, change in population. I have more African Americans. I have more Asian Americans. I have more Hispanics. Increase the workplace. Now, this terminology, African American or Asian American, my son-in-law was Jamaican, so he would say, when I call him African American, he says, "I am Jamaican." But if I'm looking at it, there's a lot of, so you got to be careful. Just because of the color of the individual does not necessarily make him African American. He could be from Jamaica. He could be from different countries that have a dark complexion. But when we talk about stereotyping and everything else, we just group them all together. So remember, Just like if you look at myself, you say, well, he's a white American. I'm a European. I was born in Germany, came over. I mean, English is second language for me. Polish, I'm not German. So I have a mixture of different cultures within me. So you can't just look at that. But generally, we're just looking at generalization. And then, okay, now the other thing is you have mothers. There's more mothers coming into the workforce, the children increasing the workforce, and there's no sign of slowing down. There's a higher divorce rate. There's less women getting married. They're cohabiting together. So they have kids. So from a supervisor, there's different, challenges that will be presented to you, and you have to be respectful to the individual because she is still a vital workforce, a vital individual within my team, and I should be able to accommodate and be able to incorporate and make flexibility of my how I manage over this diverse workforce. Okay. Now challenges. Here's some challenges for super. You need new skills to communicate. You can't communicate like the old days. I've been around, so you yell. You have to have more sensitivity. You have different cultures. Certain words I say are very offensive to other individuals. Certain words may not mean the same thing that I'm saying because in their culture it's translated, so they may have some confusion. And collaboration effectively with a broader range of individuals. How do I get the people to collaborate, to work together as a team? That's what my main function as a mentor, trainer, is basically to get the job done with a diverse team. Okay, now prejudice, real quickly. It's a preconceived judgment about an individual group. We all have some prejudice. We grow up with some prejudice, but how much of that prejudice does affect us? You know what I mean? And just because of the environment. And what you see in the news. If you're looking at people, let's say if I'm looking at, I had a lot of friends when I was going for international business from individuals that may have been from the Middle East. And we may have some individuals because what we hear in the paper or what we read, so we already have some kind of prejudice. Not intentionally, but it's just subconsciously we're bombarded with it. So you have to look at that, be aware of your own prejudice, supervise, and say, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. I can't say this for sure. This individual never have. I have to be open-minded and say, this is just something out there. I have to deal with that. Okay, so the other thing is when I take this prejudice to the next level and start to discriminate in equitable treatment based on that prejudice. Because I don't like somebody else, I'm not going to help that individual. I want to look for that individual to be, to fail. Now, not as a first-line supervisor. The first-line supervisor is diverse. I have to look within my team to make sure that there isn't any kind of prejudice within team members. And how do I overcome that? I have to be very active, not inactive, very active within that process. Okay. So then I go into prejudice and discrimination, discourages. If I let that fester within my team, and sometimes I may be the cause because I may say something the wrong way and not thinking about it, that's going to hurt another thing, or I may put some kind of a halo effect on one individual by a comment I make, and the rest of the team picks that up. So very careful, first-line supervisor. People are looking up to you. So discourages and divides employees. A supervisor treats employees unfairly for any reason. Outcome is never positive. Lowers morale and trust, not only for the person that's being discriminated or one that's viewed as, because they can pick up your prejudice against me, you don't like me for some reason, but also other team members begin to say, hey, he's prejudiced against this class of individuals. Now, are we going to be next? Because we're not like him or like her. Can hurt productivity. Okay, now stereotypes is another thing. Generalized fixed images of individuals. If you look, the people coming over here to the United States, they may have a stereotype of all Americans are obnoxious, they're very hyper, they all have road rage. Now, that's just a stereotypical thing you see in the movies, in the media, and what you're exposed to. Until you meet, I have some individuals that come to me and they say, I love Polish people. All Polish people are really good. You haven't met all the Polish people. You might have met 5, 10, a very small, but there are a lot of bad Polish people. The other thing, I run into a Chinese individual from China, and she goes to me and she says, I have problems. All these people think I'm good in math. I hate math. Math is terrible. Remember, we just got the perception that all Chinese people are excel in math. There's 1.5 billion Chinese, and we think all people from India excel in computer technology. There's 1.5 billion Indian. They're not all excel, but remember our stereotype is what we have. A lot of people think because I'm Polish, I like Chavina. Chavina is duck's blood. I hate duck's blood. But stereotypes are there. We have to be able to overcome them and say, I'm not looking at it. I'm a little different. Stereotype means every person is like that. Generalization is what I'm looking at. In the general population, there's a majority of people may like Polish Chavina or duck's blood, but not all. All, general population, they have a higher percentage of more people that in China that love mech. I got 1.5 billion. We only got 500 million. There is a big difference. Come on, there's more Chinese than there are Americans. I have a higher percentages. I'll see more people that have higher skills in mathematics because they come over here for training. It's just what we expose. But if you go to China, you'll find out that it may not be the same case. It's just our stereotype. Okay, now let's and let's say it's often unintended, occurs simply because human beings tend to put information into categories, prefer things that are more familiar, and you learn that from psychology. It's easier. We like to categorize everything. Okay. Now, the other thing is sexism, discrimination based on gender or stereotype. Example, passing over a woman for a physically demanding job, or passing over a woman for an overseas assignment because women don't like to go overseas, or because they're going to a Middle East country and they won't be able to deal with people because women may not be at the same stature. If I look at a lot of Middle Eastern countries, if you look at the women, there's a higher percentage of more women in higher levels in certain managerial companies or certain things than they are in the U.S. And the reason I'm saying that is because our perception. They may have different cultures, but we see it through our views. Now we have to look at their culture, and we may find out. Some countries, yes, that could be the case, but the majority of all Middle Eastern that is not necessarily the case. Especially when I'm dealing with business to business situation. You got the talent, you got the education. So you got to be careful about. Okay, sexual harassment, unwanted sexual attention. I'm looking at, hey, you're right. Unwanted sexual advances. Hey, you want to go out with me over and over again? Verbal abuse, contact in the work. And it can not be directly. I'm using a derogatory wording or demeaning pictures or anything else. Requests for sexual favors, including body language like whoa, you know what I mean? Displaying of images, sexual harassment is illegal. Supervisors have to adopt a zero tolerance. I see something there. I say, hey, that is not acceptable. I do not want that. That's it. Next time I'm writing you up. Give the person an advantage. Because a lot of times you have younger individuals that may be the slang or something in their culture. They don't think it's anything else as sexual harassment. But remember, I don't have to deal with that individual. It's the person who thinks that she's being harassed or he. It's not always the women. There's a lot of times, a lot of gentlemen may think I'm attractive. I'm making things up. You know what I mean? So it could be who's ever in power. Are they, or team members, are they wanting some kind of sexual favor because of proximity, or because they're in a team, because they're more forceful than the other ones? You have to make sure you control it. Okay? All right. Now, bona fide, when I look at this, is bona fide occupational qualification. Title VII allows for sexual discrimination where it's bona fide. Must be performed by on sex only. Let's see, if I'm going to a ladies' washroom and there's a attendant there, shouldn't be a gentleman in there, should be a woman in there. Actors, models, restroom attendants, security guards, and maximum prison are basically women security guards in maximum prison. Otherwise, you're going to have some sexual harassment cases if they have to forcibly contain a prisoner. Even though there's women and men in those facilities, there's always a woman to make sure that there is no sexual harassment or anything else inappropriately going on there. And the FAA, for airlines, a limit of age is 64. At 64, you shouldn't be flying a plane. Because you're taking the risk of a lot of individuals. Not that you can't be a good pilot, trust me. I'm in that age group coming up in there, so that's not the case. It's just you have to look at the safety. There's a higher percentages, maybe your reaction time and everything else, or something. It's not up to me to make that decision, but those are one bona fide occupational acceptances, so it's permissible. Okay, now when I look at this next one is ageism. When I'm looking at how old different age ages. Some people expect older workers expect older workers, again, stereotyping, to perform less effectively. Evidence shows such negative expectation are often unfounded. Age Discrimination Act, we'll talk about illegal to fire, hire, or based on individuals. The other reason a lot of people say individuals are more prone to accidents, individuals are more sick, and that's not the case. The only thing is when an individual does have an accident, the rate of accidents for younger employees and what do you call it, more of the age employees, I think over 50, 60 or whatever. I think discrimination of age is 40, but let's say if you're up in the age, let's say around 60, 65 is usually what the author is talking about in that age, and it's still working. There's a lot of people, their mind is sharp, there's not wrong, I mean, we lived to about 80, so you got 20 years, what are you going to do, sit around? So that's a workforce, but how do I utilize that workforce? And we'll talk about that. So if they get sick or they get injured, it's not that the rate is that they get sick or injured more because of accident. It's when they do get sick or injured, it takes them longer to recover because they're a little older. They're not, but they still recover, so it's just a little longer time. But they're a lot more cautious and because of their age. So they're not the risk takers. You don't have to worry about a lot of accidents. Okay, now. Percentage of over 65 in the U.S. is 71 million, or 20% of the population. Big number, right? That's a good workforce. That's a workforce that I'm going to get them for. We're not procreating as much in the U.S. as we used to, so now that's the workforce that I need. Flexible while working different schedules, serve as mentor to younger individuals, invaluable experience. You like it or not, they may not know the technology, and that's not the case. Majority, if they're at this age, by this time in the workforce, they know technology probably better than some of the younger individuals. More reliable than younger workers, they're going to come to the work no matter what. Add diversity of thought and approach, they're thinking differently, they're more loyal, and that's not wrong. A younger person is still trying to find his niche or her niche, and I understand how I was. I'd go from job to job, not job hopping, but I do so much I've learned. I want to expand until a certain time you just go and say I've learned so much. I want to learn, but at a steadier pace instead of I want it right away. Okay. Take work seriously, establish networks. We already have networks, and less likely to quit. Okay. Now, disability. Let's talk about disability. Physical and mental impairment limits a major life activity, a record of such impairment. My wife had a stroke a while back, so she's lost a lot of her activity. She's 10 years younger than me. But, nothing about that, but something happened. She's still very functional, but she may not be able to speak. She has a brace. She has it, but she's still a functional member of society. As for workers, some people say, hey, well, she's like that. What is the job task I'm making her do? Am I making her talk to individual? I'm making her do certain tasks that she's more than competent to do it. I shouldn't look at that disability. That's all disability. It just says there's something out there, but there's a combination. Now, when I look at accommodations for disability, qualified individual with disability has to have a qualified disability that is recorded, that you're not making it up, for lack of it, can perform essential function of a job with maybe some kind of accommodations. Now, a lot of companies, and it doesn't mean if I'm coming in a life support system, everything else, I'm a small business, that's excessive accommodation. I'm not being disrespectful for disability. Remember, I mentioned my wife. I understand it. I'm dyslexic on that. I understand there's a lot of disabilities you could overcome, but you still, when you do the accommodations, it should be in the range of your how much of accommodation. I think that it comes like 2,000, 5,000. Depends. There's a number. What is an accommodating accommodation? Remember, someone who's really disabled, I can't afford that. It's not right. But if I do some accommodations for that individual, I don't drop the performance requirements for one who doesn't have the accommodation. They just basically have a tool, and they have the same requirements to meet the same goal set. But they may do if I have a speech or a hearing impairment. I have a hearing aid, and that helps me. If I can't see, I have a braille. I could still be just as productive as one that has the sight. I just had that accommodation. Okay, do you see what I mean? So you don't drop it down and say, well, she's got the accommodation, I'm going to reduce. Or he or she has to do less work. No, same amount of work, the accommodation will bring it on there. Okay, and you trust me. A lot of times they outperform people who have their all their senses and all the functionality. Okay, advantage of diversity. Okay, so we have that. So now the supervisor, this is all from supervisor. Advantage of diversity for supervisor. I learn from others. That makes me stronger because I can see different ideas. I learn. I'm better motivated, more of a loyal team because now the team's working with different functionality. Enhanced communication, improved communication because now I'm not only looking my way, I have to be more sensitive. So I'm very aware of what I say may have a different meaning to a different individual depending on from the culture. Enhanced career advancement. I could say I can manage. The hardest thing of a supervisor or middle manager, how do I manage a diverse workforce? It's easier. It's hard enough to manage someone that's like me. It's even a little bit harder to manage someone who's completely different than I am. Okay, but I'm looking at the task. You take away the prejudice. You take away that they're an individual that wants to learn. I grew up in a city where when I grew up was predominantly Hispanic and African American. Coming from a large family, and so 10% was basically a white individual, poor individuals who were in the city at that time. The neighborhoods has changed, but I understand that. But after a while, you don't look at the color, everything else. You're in the same situation. You look at the individual, the person inside. That's what you're looking at. But each individual is different, so you learn. The more you're exposed to diversity, you're a lot more sensitive to your own culture and to different nonverbal cues. Okay. Now, the advantage for diversity of an organization, when I look at this, now, one of the biggest attract and retain the best employees, increase productivity, different ideas, higher morale, motivation, because the different cultures will bring up their own, work ethics, a resilient workforce, no matter what happens. They're flexible because they come up with new ideas, greater innovation, reduced turnover. People like to be in a diverse workforce, greater market share because I represent the market that I'm serving. Okay, let me speed this up a little. Improves my communication. Again, like I mentioned before, nonverbal. Look, in the U.S., when someone doesn't look at me or they look down, you're thinking, oh, the guy's either lying or she's lying, or they're timid or afraid to say. They're very timid. Asian cultures, I'm not stereotyping, not all. There's a lot of Asian people who be right in my face, or some American. But Asian cultures from Asia, China, India, in the hemisphere, they, more or less for Asian, it's disrespectful to stare a person in the eye. So, to them, it's nothing wrong with them. Same thing when I go, okay, I'm looking, I'm nodding my head. In the U.S. means I'm in agreement. Yes, they like my idea. This means no. But in a lot of cultures, the Asian, when they're just nodding their head, they're just acknowledging, I heard you. I don't agree with you. I'm just heard. So I'm looking, yeah. They love it, but they're saying, yeah, keep on talking. I'm listening to you. I hear you, but I'm not agreeing. We're Americans, we're blocking out, yeah, I like that. Otherwise, we go, I don't know. We're sending different messages. So remember, the nonverbal is very important. Body language supervisor choose words more carefully because if I say, hey, are you hot? In the U.S., again, let's go back to our discrimination and sexual harassment. You got to be careful. If I tell somebody you're hot, hey, are you hot? What does that mean? Are you hot because of the temperature? Are you hot because you're attractive? Do you see what I mean? So some of the words you got to be careful how you state it, depending on how the other individual is going to pick it up. Okay, and the same thing. I was doing something else. Somebody from Britain or UK, they come over here and just hired an individual, and they go say, "Hey, where's the crack at?" They go, "Oh my God, what did I hire?" And in their culture, crack is like, "Where's the good time at?" They're not talking about crack cocaine. They're talking about crack. You see how just one word, and all of a sudden someone hears that, oh my goodness, what is going on? You have to be careful, and you have to say, hey, there's some kind of slangs that you don't use, there's some things that mean different things in this culture. Okay, diversity training, formal training. To have it, don't expect that people, once they put them in, they're going to love and get together. No different if you bring... my daughter-in-law is Mexican, so when I came and met her family, that's good. She gave me information. Don't say this, expect this. I don't know. The same thing when my wife came to my family. At that time, they're all Polish. These are the cues to understand. you have to have formal training, and basically it's not only for your current employees, for new employees coming in. I have someone from India, I have someone from China that they look down or they're very quiet, may come across as timid, or I have another individual that's very loud or speaking, may come across as too aggressive. I have to talk to that individual to make sure he or she is aware of the culture they're coming in, and I make sure the culture that's existing make them aware of individuals coming in as different. So it's formal. Required awareness, multiculturalism is there, helps reduce prejudice and stereotyping, and I had that spelled wrong. Corrected that right away. See how good this works? You're live with me, administrated by professional trainers. When you talk about sensitivity, a lot of times I'll teach HR or some other classes, or and I'll talk, and I come to the class, and I may have a very diversified, either Hispanic, African American, people of color, Asian, and I start off the class. Look, I may say something that may upset you. I don't want to do it on purpose. I'm a little white, Catholic, Polish person. That's who I am. I can't help it. I grew up that way. This is my genes. This is who I am. I understand that. So this is my perspective, not to upset you or do anything else. So I'll say something, even though my background's in international business, I've said there's so many different cultures. You could hidden culture that I could mess up. So here's what I do. If I say something, just talk to me on the side. Dr. George, this is wrong. This is inappropriate for us. It doesn't mean anything. And I will correct it. I was in a class. I was doing the class, a sports marketing class, and I called somebody a sports jock. And that's offensive. When I was growing up, a sports jock is cool. Man, I wish I was a sports jock. It means I'm muscular and everything else. This person says sports jock, not cool. That's derogatory. That's upsetting. I apologize. I didn't know it. But you see how you could turn around and get somebody upset. They may not say something, but other individuals, you have to say, don't take it wrong, apologize. And the group as a team, as a supervisor, we all learn together. Not to signal or identify one individual. Try to be sensitive through that, all right? So we're diversified training. And the rest of the thing is here, I'm not going to go through there, is age over 40, is called age discrimination. My son at that time, he was 21, he had some problem at work. I'm going to turn it into the age discrimination. You got to be over 40. That means they're getting rid of you because they want younger people with less cost. So you got to be careful on that. And if you take HR, we'll go affirmative action, a little different, the diversification, civil rights, again, no discrimination, those are the laws, equal pay, veteran readjustments, there's money to bring veterans in. They do a lot to protect our country, and now how do I bring them back in the workforce? There's something that when I was in the service, there's sometimes when I came back from the service, they were saying, oh, this type of individual's got this kind of problem, they got some baggages. Same thing when you have veterans coming back from Iraq and some different things. Not all veterans have problems. Remember, the war, any kind of military action has different effects on different individuals. Majority of veterans coming back are doing pretty good, but now we start stereotyping. We're not hiring anyone because for the few that do have issues or it affects people differently. I'm not going to talk about much more. Just to understand that it's not everyone. A lot of people deal through it, through meditation, through different kind of counseling, and there's programs out there that brings you back into society. All right, and it affects different ones. And some people are more in combat, others are other. But remember, that's out there. Rehabilitation Act prohibits not to hire some people with handicap. Increased Disability Act, Civil Rights Act. Again, shift burden to employment discrimination suits back to the employer, not the employee. Family Medical Act, qualified people, when you're talking about the single mother. And this one is a different page. Okay. All right. So that takes care of it. So if I look at a nutshell, here we go. I think this is going to be about a half an hour, but this is a very sensitive issue. Remember, as a first-line supervisor, you should look at your own, make sure you're not prejudiced, discriminated, and some of that stuff is just by society or what you see. You don't realize that. There's a lot, if you take me for HR, there's a lot of tests, and you'll be surprised how that subliminal prejudice is in most of us. I just want to make a difference, but how do you overcome it once you're aware of it? And it's not that you're over. There's some people are very discriminative. There's some people are very prejudiced. I can't change all that, but I can control it within my department. That's your job. Control it, and work at it. My job is not to turn him around or turn her around or whatever. My job is at work, you respect the individual. We're all working together. We're all equal, and I'm the one that makes it happening. And then, the different diversity improves on my communication skills. And the whole thing is make sure that the team is working well. Once you get a diversified team working well, you'll be surprised. Outperforms anyone. Different ideas, creativity. I have people from and looking at different things, not only in one vision, one tunnel, one frame of mind, different frames of mind. That helps me as a supervisor as I'm moving up the organization, because now most companies are more diversified. How do I manage? Okay? So that's about it. So we're in Series 5, Managing Diversity for Supervision. My name is Dr. George Mochocki, and I'll see you in the next series, and I hope you like the session. Bye.